I tried to get in already, but I guess it hadn't started. Let's try it now. I mean, you have to call on a phone. I mean, come on, man. What is this joke?
Welcome to WebEx. Enter your access code or meeting number followed by pound. Your entry 920132172 is not valid or the meeting has not started yet. Re-enter your access code
It's
or meeting
8:01.
number followed
It's
by
5:01 your time. Goddamn. Typical TRIMET.
Your entry 920132172 is not valid or the meeting has not started yet.
Fucking losers.
Re-enter
You're
your
fucking
access code or
losers.
meeting number followed by pound.
It's 8:02, you fuck. One more time. That's 50.
Thanks for using WebEx. Visit our website at www.webex.com.
What? Okay. All right, here we go. Well, what? What is this? Is this some kind of joke? Wait a minute. What is this? What a joke. Wait a minute. What's this? Not now. What is this? Add WebEx to Chrome. Okay, add to Chrome. Add extension. Checking. All right, so what do you do? Save. Now, okay. Open. Well, what good is it? I don't even. All right. All right. Come on. Come on, idiot. Just skip this shit. I want to join the event. I can't hear anything. Where is it? Where? I can't hear anything. Where is the sound? Okay, where? I can't hear them. Microphone. Okay, well there they are, but I don't. It says it's there, but.
For those of you just joining us, we will begin in about a minute. We will be taking a number of presentations this morning, or excuse me, this evening for you all, and we will be taking questions at the end. And if you want to send in a question, please use the chat function on WebEx. You'll see a circle at the bottom of your screen with a conversational bubble. You can click on that, and you can send a text message to JC Vanetta, that's me, and I'll be asking the questions at the very end. And with that, we will begin recording, and we will start this evening's open house, virtual open house, with TRIMET's own General Manager, Mr. Doug Kelsey. Doug?
Thank you for your question.
Thank you, JC, and hello and good evening, everybody. Thank you first for joining us, taking your valuable time to join us for the virtual town hall here tonight to talk about our fiscal 21 budget discussion. So I think as JC's indicated, my name is Doug Kelsey, and I am the General Manager here at TRIMET. I also really want to thank in particular 3 individuals who joined us today. 3 of our board members,
Fucking-
Directors Bauman, Director Simmons, and Director Way. Thank you for freeing up your valuable and important time to listen and participate in this
Oh, look,
conversation.
they got an
So thank you.
interpreter.
This is the second of 3 town houses we're having. We had one last night in Espanol,
Get back here.
and these 2 tonight are English. The next 2. So tonight you're going to hear from our panel, which I'll introduce later and individually, regarding the budget revisions. If you recall, at the end of March, just right after we published our full budget, it was about a week after that, in fact, COVID hit, and we've had to literally scramble to redo the budget because of the new world circumstances that we all face. So we'll also include part of that is also part of the CARES Act funds. We'll give you an update on that and how we plan to gradually restore our service. We'll talk about some of our ongoing safety and security efforts and impacts to the communities of concern. And do encourage you, as JC mentioned, make sure you write down notes to make sure we've got time available for questions at the end for everybody. In an ideal world, we would not be doing this on WebEx or Zoom or whatever the technology is. We'd be doing it in person,
What happened here?
as we did last year with our multiple open houses. But we don't want to miss the opportunity to connect and get input from people as we construct our budget to build on the service that we already do. And I know our plan was intended to be continuing with the largest service expansion in our literally TRIMET's history, including frequent bus lines and our efforts to make the service even faster and more reliable. So we've had to take a step back because of the economic circumstances that we're all facing right now, in addition to COVID and other significant items that are unfolding. So very clearly, I don't think I have to tell anybody here, these are just not ideal times and they're not normal times. But we are going to be successful. Our foundation is strong. We are making adaptations while we go, and I'll cover a few of those in a little bit. We are working through some of our key principles, are preserving the cash for services to the degree we possibly can, preserving jobs where we possibly can, and also ensuring we provide a safe and secure environment. On top of maintaining, particularly this acute time, cash and financial flexibility, particularly
I'm not recording the picture.
Again, these are not normal times on the financial side, let alone the service time as well. So now, just before we get into the detailed budget discussions, I would like to address, make a few comments on the recent protests and events that have spurred them on. At TRIMET, we also share the anger, the frustration, and the pain that's being felt across the region, in the state, and very clearly in the Portland region right now.
What's this mean?
The recent and tragic deaths of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and Atiana Jefferson, just to name a few, has caused justifiable outrage.
What chat box?
They should not be the next. They should be the last on this list of tragedies.
Ask them any questions.
Well, the protests have disrupted our service, and we apologize for that. We're doing it only in the spirit to make everybody safe, including our very important staff. Some individuals, despite the importance to protest, have caused damage to our city.
We'll search Twitter.
These acts should not overshadow the need and the call for changes. We should also remain focused on the message of those who are legitimately and peacefully protesting and exercising their fundamental rights. We also know we cannot ignore the blatant acts that have magnified the desperate treatment, the systemic racism, acts of hate, discrimination, or violence. At TRIMET, and I know all of our staff feels this way, and the board definitely feels this way, including the statement they recently published, we condemn any of these behaviors, be they deliberate, they veiled, explicit, or indirect.
That's right.
It's just not good. We hold fast to our commitment, as reflected in our vision, mission, and values of diversity, of equity, and inclusion.
Yeah, equity. Look at these
within the agency
here, Dougie, baby.
and within the practices that we employ. Our number one priority remains that we will be safe and secure for our customers and our employees. We must provide that, including being safe from racial and other biases.
TRIMET website.
TRIMET is open to exploring also new ways to look at the current topic of providing safety and security on the transit system. There have been recent announcements by the mayor of Portland and others about that exact issue today. So we want to take a steady look at this,
You can't see Doug's face,
but happy to
but
do
my
so.
system's not
There's a lot of
set up
information we don't know.
for this particular.
But on that regard, we already have made
Can I
changes
get-
to the
I wonder
system
if I can-
to make sure it's
No,
more
I-
equitable and more accessible for everybody.
Yeah, I can't change it now.
For example, we've implemented a low-income fare program with now more than 30,000 deserving individuals enrolled. We are the only transit agency in
not good
North
enough.
America to do an outside audit of its fare enforcement outcomes.
Oh,
Put itself at risk.
Jesus.
In fact, we've done 2.
Oh,
We also changed state law and lowered fines for failure to pay fare.
No.
We explored the partnering with the
mean,
City of
Jesus?
Portland on street response teams. We added security trained in non-confrontational and de-escalation techniques. And we have removed police officers from direct involvement in fare enforcement.
I'm recording.
The expiration of the current police management contract is also right now as a natural time to review the structure and the management of law enforcement of the TRIMET system,
Are you tired
which
anyway?
we will be embarking on. The current contract does expire at the end of
Okay?
the calendar year, being December.
Are you tired?
We'll use the intervening time to explore a number of options to meet the agency's goal of ensuring an environment that is safe and secure and free from racial and other biases for
Really?
everybody.
Well, next time.
We also now look to our leaders of color within our agency and in our community, as we need to continue to listen and offer our support. And we stand with the community as we work to identify the problems and sincerely work to solve them in a pragmatic way. It may take time. It probably will take time, but we are committed. Now, we're also here to talk today about our upcoming fiscal 21 budget, which is the intended theme of tonight's event. I'm joined, as you will be able to hear shortly, from a great team who will be sharing information on the different aspects of our budget and the recommendations and the recovery efforts. But before I do hand it over to them, I would like to take a few moments to quickly share how TRIMET has been impacted by COVID-19. It has hit everybody and nobody is immune.
I suggest you.
If we look back to February, just before the virus hit our area, our ridership was strong.
Yeah.
Contrary to what many media had covered, or was the rumor on the street that TRIMET's ridership continues to decline. Well, it was up actually more than 6% over the previous year, and our bus ridership saw its 11th straight month of growth.
TRIMET.
On March 1st, we rolled out our spring service improvements. That included 2 new frequent service bus lines and other improvements to help our buses move faster and through increasingly congested streets. Then on March 23rd, after Governor Brown issued the important stay-at-home orders, our ridership dipped about 30% initially, and then by as much as 70% overall as the pandemic reached peak in our corner of the world. That is significant and similar to what many other transit agencies throughout North America are facing. But with it, it also brought an immediate, significant loss of fare revenue. And as the pandemic caused painful job losses and continues to do, it takes its toll on the economy.
See this with this camera.
It signaled also, as reflected in the May 20th projections by the governor, much less payroll tax revenue in their projections.
Whoops.
That happens to be our largest source of our revenue. So it's about, I think, 60%. And the fare recovery is from fare boxes approximately 18%.
I can't see it.
So it's going to have an impact onto us, not just today, but likely into years to come. We're an essential service, and that's a good thing. Transit continued to roll through the whole pandemic, and while at the same time, the impacts related to it of a recession.
Ah!
And despite all
Another
that, even from a
Douglas
recent
speech, can you
poll from
believe it?
Metro that was just conducted, TRIMET remains the highest rated agency of 71% of all government services in this region, and including the federal government. We're proud of that, but we have a lot of work to do, and as you know today, we'll talk about that. Well, and while our service really never stopped, we also we took hard turns and looked dramatic, and we will look dramatically different today and possibly down the road tomorrow. We made immediate changes to meet the CDC and the state guidelines in the implementation of COVID plans. We've temporarily reduced our services by about 20%, and we worked hard to ensure the continuous service, especially to healthcare facilities and areas with higher numbers of transit-dependent riders who would continue to need to connect to services and essential jobs. We're not out of this yet. In fact, we've got a long way to go. We're only a couple innings into probably a 9-inning baseball game, if you will, as an analogy. Our service and our costs of the enhanced sanitizing efforts are ongoing, and our ridership still remains low. We remain hopeful, but also must plan pragmatically and practically to preserve jobs, our service, the cash, to maintain not just service for the moment, but service for the long term.
Yeah, Dougie. All right, Dougie.
No one really knows what the full revenue impacts of this pandemic the economy are going to have. I suggest even Wall Street is not even sure.
Am I getting
so we need to manage flexibility in our financial
panel review
to adjust to the assumptions we're making today.
Thank God.
Well, COVID-19 changed nearly every aspect of our operations and in quick order.
No.
We've been able to maintain forward momentum on important projects. The Division Transit Project, for example,
why can't I record
such project? It's currently under construction, and we also just learned we received, as even tweeted out by the President of the United States, a $100 million award for our Better Red project, or the Max Red Line extension.
Is it recording on my computer?
As noted, these funds, they're also tied to this project. They cannot be reallocated to other agency efforts. We have a lot of administrative hoops to get through, but it's a very encouraging sign. You even help create further jobs in the economy at this time.
Thanks, man.
And it will bring great service and help speed up the system and bring more transit capacity on the rail network.
Who's here?
We'll also be making significant repairs to the steel bridge this summer. In fact, the whole month of August is the largest, what we call state of good repair project this agency has undertaken. About a $20 million project, which will be, as I've said, a month in duration, but it's to rebuild and make sure the trains move a little faster over the steel bridge, because all trains cross it, and it's also ensuring safety for everyone to last the next 20 years. And finally on that, as we all know, we continue to move forward, and also part of the T2020 ballot measure, the very critical Southwest Corridor project. It's not just a project in a geographical line for a certain part of this region. These are investments in the grid of mobility for everybody. Now, knowing the background, let's move on to the recovery plan for 2021, which starts just a few short weeks from now on July 1st, which is the effective of next year's fiscal budget. Again, I do want to reiterate the principles that we put forward here to preserve jobs, to preserve service, and do it with a safe way, and also being financially flexible and preserving cash for the short, medium, and longer term to the degree possible. There's an incredible team working on this, and I really want to compliment Dee Brookshire and her whole team. Specifically, it's been very intense work. You'll hear from her shortly.
Oh, God.
So I'd now like to introduce Dee Brookshire.
She
is our Executive Director of Finance Administration to cover also about our revised budget and how we plan to allocate funds specifically on the CARES Act. Again, please keep your questions and your notes, and we'll make sure we capture them at the end. Dee, I'd like to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Doug. So, good evening, everyone. I'd like to talk about the COVID-19 budget actions and how this has affected our internal workings. We had TRIMET board approve the proposed fiscal year 2021 budget, and we released it to the public and the Tax Supervising Conservation Committee to review for the public hearing scheduled for April 20th, 2020. And that approved budget for fiscal year 21 anticipated, as Doug indicated, another year of robust growth and service improvements.
Yeah.
We spent about 3.5 months preparing that document. So COVID-19 and the governor's stay-at-home order changed everything, and we knew that the entire budget worked. The TSCC public hearing was pushed to May, and the date for adoption of the fiscal 2021 budget was pushed to June. So in preparing for the COVID-19 budget effects, we had to do everything in a hurry. To prepare, the GM met with each executive director to determine the cuts that were available or possible in both the operating and capital budgets for the rest of fiscal year 20 and the approvals for the fiscal year 2021 proposed budget. Planned expenditures, operating and capital projects that could be de-scoped, deferred, or canceled were determined and the budgets were adjusted. The GM immediately initiated the following cost reduction measures for fiscal year 20 and 21. Hiring freeze on all but essential positions with GM's approval. We have a ban on non-essential out-of-town travel. Anything has to be also approved by the GM. About a 95% reduction. Reduced increases to the regular O&M budget of 1% across the board. Reduced service on bus and rail without layoffs. We postponed an energy-saving fuel conversion due to the increased cost, and we ordered no expanded service through fiscal year 2021.
You are destroyed forever, and you will never.
So in order to rework the fiscal 2021 budget, staff had to understand the impacts of COVID-19 on the fiscal 20 budget. So the passenger fares, this is what we determined, that the passenger fares for the final 3 months of fiscal year 20 were expected to decline by $28.3 million. Tax revenues are expected to decline by $48 million. We were able to get a federal CARES Act reimbursement in the works for fiscal year 20 at $59 million. Operating expense reduction is expected to be $21.3 million. Capital expense reductions is expected to be $2.8 million. So those changes affect the beginning balance of the new fiscal year 2021 budget. This gave us a new starting point from which to build a revised fiscal year 2021 budget. The next step is to roll forward the new ending fund balance from fiscal year 2020 and incorporate all known impacts to the fiscal year 2021 budget. The adjustments to the fiscal year 2021 approved budget include passenger fares, payroll tax, and other revenues reduced by $125.8 million. CARES Act reimbursements are expected to be received amounting to $126 million. Operating expenditures were reduced, but because we had to add back so many expenditures for COVID-19, and it just remained flat. There was no change in the operating expenditures. Capital expenditure paid for with general funds increased by $18 million to pay for the Steel Bridge project that Doug was referencing. So the final fiscal 2021 budget recap will be coming before the board on June 24th for adoption. It is provides a total budget of $1.64 billion.
This is so boring.
The day-to-day operating
TRIMET board
requirements
meeting.
total $732.8 million. That would be $610.2 million for all system operating costs and $122.6 million for debt service. The capital improvement program totals $377.79 million. That total includes all types of money going into the capital program: general fund, bond proceeds, and grants. Pass-through funds, funding exchange payments, and special payments amount to $18.68 million. Our contingency is $39.6 million. The total fund balance remaining is $471.3 million, and of that, $137.7 million is our unrestricted fund balance of 2.25 months. That's our reserve. With that, I'm happy to turn it over to Tom Mills, Director of Mobility Planning and Policy, to talk about our service restoration. Tom?
All right.
Thank you, Dee, and thank you everyone for coming this evening. Appreciate your attendance.
I'm the only attendee.
If we could go to the next slide. Thank you. As both Doug and Dee mentioned, on March 23rd, the governor issued her stay-at-home order requiring folks to try to stay home as much as possible. And that has meant two major things for us. One is a big decrease in riders. Doug talked about that. And with that came a significant decrease in the fare revenue that we receive. We receive about 17% of our budget, our revenue, from fares, and fewer riders, significantly fewer riders means less fare revenue. It also meant a big decrease in payroll tax because as businesses have had to close, that means fewer workers, higher unemployment, and less payroll tax. It's important to note, though, we don't actually even know what that decrease is going to be yet. We are doing our best. Dee's group is doing their best, has done their best to project what that would be, but we are still waiting for that disbursement from the state, and we will, be able to move forward once we know more. If we go to the next slide. As a result of reduced revenue, we acted quickly to reduce service in preparation for that reduced revenue. So we started by reducing service by 20% on the bus, MAX, and West system. When we decided to reduce that service, we had some important tenets in mind. The first was to try to preserve the network as much as possible. And we have successfully done this. Only one bus line was eliminated. All other bus lines still run. Many of them run at reduced levels, but we are still providing largely the same coverage as we had previously. The only bus line that was eliminated was line 272, the PDX night bus. This was a relatively new bus line that was started in fall of 2018. It was a late night bus to PDX when the red line doesn't run. And unfortunately, it had very low ridership to begin with. Once COVID hit and the airlines were, at least in the early days, largely not operating as much and cutting back on trips, we really didn't feel that there was demand for that service. Additionally, the overnight service on lines 20 and 57, lines 20 Burnside Stark and 57 TV Highway were also eliminated. Those lines still run, they just don't run between the hours of 2 a.m. and 4:30. Otherwise, all lines are still intact and running, but many, as I said, are running at reduced levels. When deciding how to reduce levels, we wanted to make sure that we could preserve weekday service on lines in equity communities, hospitals, and job centers. So that's what we did. We looked at those lines serving equity communities. We maintained their weekday service, hospitals as well, and job centers, especially job centers that serve, that have a lot of folks who would be essential workers. An example of this would be bus line 81, which serves the Amazon facility in Troutdale. That line, not only has that line not been cut, we actually have added service to that line because social distancing requires us to add additional service. So that line is actually running a little bit more frequency than it was prior to it. I should point out that weekend bus service on Saturdays was reduced to Sunday service. So both Saturday and Sunday are at the Sunday level. And MAX service is running at Sunday service all week long. Of course, MAX service at Sunday service still means, or Sunday level still means that MAX is running every 15 minutes throughout the day. Finally, we did decide to suspend our planned expansion for fiscal year 2021. It didn't make sense to try to expand service while also cutting service elsewhere. So that expansion has been put on hold, hopefully just for 1 year. Next slide, please. And so already we are starting to think about responsibly restoring service. But service restoration will depend on three things. First, of course, as the finances allow. And as activity starts to pick up, the region is reopening, we hope to see our finances grow. We expect to see more demand for ridership, and we want to add service. And I just revealed number two, as ridership increases. So again, as the region reopens, we expect ridership to increase, and we'll want to stay ahead of that to make sure that we can provide the service for folks. And then, of course, we need to make sure that safety and maintenance standards are still met as we do this. But as I mentioned, we just don't know when that all is going to. There are too many unknown factors for us. So I wish I could give you a timeline of when we would start restoring service, but at this time,
Well, it's the same
we don't
old
have
shit.
that.
We know all.
But we are constantly keeping an eye on ridership. We will be getting the finance numbers soon, and we can project from there, and we will hope to make restoration as soon as possible. Also, please note, we are every day tracking overloads on the bus lines and adding trips to lines that have consistent overloads. Next slide, please. So when we are ready to restore service, we are looking to have a three-step incremental approach to it. So I mentioned we cut service back 20%, so we are now at 80% of what our service levels were in February. Our first step will be to go from the 80% level to the 90% level of where we were in February. And when we do this, we plan to focus those restorations on lines that serve low-income communities and communities of color. As ridership and finances allow, we will then take our second step, and that second step will be to go from 90% to 95% of where we were in February. Again, we will look to focus that restoration on low-income communities and communities of color. Additionally, we will be looking to restore service to our high ridership routes in downtown Portland. We expect at that point, downtown Portland will be reopening quite a bit, and there will be quite a bit of demand for more service to that area. Lastly, for the third step, from 95% to 100% of service levels where we were in February, we're going to use that opportunity to evaluate some of our lower performing routes that don't get a lot of ridership. We're not getting much ridership prior to the pandemic, and use that opportunity to think about possibly reallocating some of that service. It doesn't mean those bus lines would go away, but it just might mean that we won't restore them back to the service levels they were before. And then those service hours can be put into bus lines where we do have crowding and we haven't been able to upgrade in the past. Next slide.
What happened to the Zeitgeist movement?
Okay, thank you. And of course, once we restore to 100%, we will be looking to expand service once again, as we were doing successfully for the last several years. So that will require us to continue to monitor ridership and demand and finances throughout the next couple of fiscal years. Our hope is that within 2 years, we will be back at expanding service, and you all will be back riding the bus. However, there are some projects that we are still committed to no matter what. The first is the Vision Transit Project and the bus service improvements related to that. Not just the Division Transit Project, but all the bus lines that we're going to get upgraded around that. Additionally, the Better Red Project, the Red Line Project extension to Hillsborough, as well as, I think as Doug had mentioned, the on-time performance improvements that will be made.
Oh, this is a great one right
Finally, West Commuter Rail will be evaluated separately. That line has struggled to meet its ridership goals, and we'll continue to monitor that during the pandemic and make a decision on when and if to restore that at the levels that it was previously. So with that in mind, that is our approach to service restoration in the coming years. I look forward to answering questions when we are done with the presentation. However, now I would like to introduce John Gardner. John is our Director of Transit Equity, Inclusion, and Community Affairs. John is going to talk to you about how communities of concern were considered as part of this budget. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom, and good evening, everyone. Again, my name is John Gardner, and I oversee TRIMET's Department of Transit Equity, Inclusion, and Community. Tonight, I'm going to speak briefly about some of the initiatives, programs, and efforts that this year's proposed budget supports through my department. Next slide. Like many other public agencies, TRIMET is committed to minimizing budget impacts to low-income and minority communities. So first, I will give a brief overview of our efforts, followed by more details across some of the larger areas of action. Our focus in the year ahead is to ensure that we are using an equity lens to help inform service planning decisions. We are doing this by using our nationally recognized Civil Rights Title VI program to analyze and inform our decisions around service changes, and to guard against any disparate impacts for communities of color or disproportionate burdens for low-income riders. We will also continue to spread the news and increase awareness around our low-income fare program, which is currently partnering with over 50 locations and community-based organizations. We have even added the ability to enroll eligible riders online, and we expect to grow the program in the year ahead despite the COVID pandemic. In addition to TRIMET's reduced fare programs, we are also excited to support the current efforts led by Metro that may bring even more resources to the region in supporting free fares for high school age students and others through a regional funding measure. This year's budget also supports TRIMET's ability to continue to work towards increasing our equitable contract to ensure that there are opportunities for historically underrepresented businesses, especially minority contractors, to help us build out the region's public transit system. Finally, TRIMET is looking for even more ways to connect to the community while we move into the second year of working to build out our language access efforts for riders from limited English communities as part of our Title VI program. Next slide, please. As I just mentioned, this year's budget continues to support discounted fare program initiatives. July will mark TRIMET's third year of implementing the reduced fare program for low-income riders in partnership with a large network of community organizations across the Reed County area. The program has been a big success and has enrolled over 30,000 individuals since it began. Riders who participate in the program can save up to 72% off the cost of their monthly fare. Our low-income fare program is similar to our Honored Citizen and Youth Fare programs and the discounts. We will issue you a personalized hop card that lets you ride bus, mass.
I can't take it anymore. I can't take any more of that shit, man. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I don't want to hear it. It makes you sick.